Unless you want a question, but so why is the far right and far left not the same, or what's commonly called or misconstrued as horseshoe theory? Because we define the word left and right on a single unidimensional line. Left is considered progressive or revolutionary, right is considered, if you like, conservative, or more strictly speaking, reactionary. So why would the far left and far right not be the same? The far left, I'm a neo-reactionary absolutist. The far left, or the idea of being far left is to progress society into its ultimate form of entropy and decay. Ultimately, the far left will progress all physical differences and make them equal. We call that entropy, both politically and in science. As reactionaries, as I represent the vanguard of the far right, I work with very far right, let's just say, affairs. Our job is to react against this progressive society, break it, halt it, and move into the direction we like. So when someone comes up and says, if I drew a two-dimensional political compass and I went through the topological extremes of left and right and I wrapped around, that's a naive and infantile understanding of both political compasses on n dimensions, topologically what that means, and what the ideology means. So the far right that I represent, I reject this idea that far right and far left is the same as being just idiocy. Thanks for your time, man. Hope the channel goes well.
Well, the obvious commonality is that they're both far. So that is an extreme position, either way, either side of the spectrum of the political divide. And any position which is ideologically far tends to be destructive. I think the motivating factor in human affairs should be rationale and science, and when you pit people ideologically against another group, it's usually a disaster. If you go through the history of the 20th century, all the far lefts and all far right movements have ended up in a lot of bloodshed and basically human culling.
Examples?
Far right, Nazi Party, communism, they were far left. They killed a lot of people who believed in religion. And anything extreme, like in China, the Great Leap, and millions of Chinese died. So anything political ideology that's an extreme is bound to have an adverse impact on human well-being and happiness. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, so if you're a Tommy Robinson supporter, you're classed as far right. Do you agree with that? So that's how some people would describe far right. But then, of course, they'll say he's an Islamophobe because if you support him, maybe this guy's against immigration. He thinks we have enough people in this country, we don't want to open our doors to let too many people in. So he's an Islamophobe. And then people describe those type of people as far right. So that would be my description of far right. But far left is the people on the other side that are intermediate, moderate. Okay?
Are they the same?
They have different points of view, different opinions. So some people might say, I'm all for immigration. I think we should give other people a chance to come and live, to change their life in this country. Some people think we're a small island, we're overcrowded, we don't have room for anybody else. Those people are always classed as far right. Unfortunately, at this modern day, politicians, you can't speak the truth because freedom of speech is becoming less and less. So if you do speak your opinion, you're always classed as far right. Regardless of whether you're right or wrong, you're classed as far right. My personal opinion. Thank you very much.
I get mixed up between the both. Far left is like the people's people rat. Far left is the people's people, and far right would be extreme government, or is that right? I think that's right. But I don't think they can be the same. I don't think they can be the same just because it is what it is. Left can't be right. Right? Get left behind or go large. So I don't think they can be the same. I do think there is an agenda between like separating people, like, you know what I mean, divide and conquer, you know how it is. And there is, I do believe it's like the Hegelian dialectic thing, the good and evil. We get two bad guys, one pretending to be good and then one pretending to be bad. Same sort of thing. Anything else?
I don't know what it is. Is it far right religion or distance or what? We're all the same, aren't we? You shouldn't judge anything. If you're far left, far right, you're not doing anything wrong, are you? Alright.
Far right, far left, both exactly the same thing. Like a bird, left and right wing, it's all the same bird. That's my case.
So far right, far left the same, completely and utterly agree. I mean, sometimes it's described as a horseshoe, isn't it? And they're the ends of the horseshoe that are very nearly touching. But, you know, they're anti-Semitic, they're homophobic, they're anti-Jewish. The far right and the far left, they share an awful lot in common. And I think they are very, very similar. I mean, who made the famous quote that the fascists will be the anti-fascists? Was it Churchill? Someone made that comment. And you know, the likes of Antifa, who are a typical representation of your far left, will, if you want to see any behaviour that's fascistic in behaviour, look at the so-called anti-fascists. You know, they're authoritarian. They're both into collectivist politics as opposed to individual politics. So, you know, they all want to pigeonhole everyone, whether it's your class, whether it's your race, whatever it is. You know, they share so much in common. And I despise both of them. Except for I think the phrases are used too broadly these days. Everyone is particularly far right. People, it's because the Overton window has lurched a long way. That views were once considered very middle of the road are now considered far right, which I think is a nonsense because they're not really far right. So I suppose that's my 2 points. They are the same, but also the definitions of them and what people do to be branded as certainly on the far right has changed significantly now.
Okay, so first of all, I go by what the word says. The word of God says we should honor authority, those who have been put in leadership over us. But far right, far left, they're both the same thing. They all have the same ideology, simply because it's not based on love. And the kind of love I'm talking about is to love without discrimination, without segregation. And the far right and the far left are segregated in their ideology, in their practices, and in their beliefs. One will promote abortion. It basically depends the being who gets elected in the chair at the time. So there are many practices that have come in, either through the left or either through the right, that are nothing to do with love, that are just man's beliefs, man's practices, man's preferences, man's ways, man's option, and they are very far from the truth.
Far right is not the same as far left, as I understand it. Far right is extreme form of it is fascism. Far left is, I guess you could say, associated with communism. So it's two totally different ideologies. Maybe people say that they're the same. I think often to try and sort of justify things around violence. You know, that they both cause violence. But there's a lot of ideologies that cause violence. Religions cause violence. Various different religions of all stripes have created conflict. There's been conflict because of social issues, economic issues, but the ideology is fundamentally different. Far left is about collectivism. Far right is a kind of about a kind of national identity and an association with one form of national identity. So that's how I see it. I think they're totally different. Yeah. Well, far left is kind of about communism as the kind of ideological expression, but in other terms as well, about resources being shared and being redistributed. Whether that happens in practice, as we've seen in many cases, it hasn't, because of corruption and other issues. But I think the ideology at heart is about equality and redistribution of resources, whereas far right, I think, is more about national identity, which is why I think far right ideology tends to have a better relationship with capitalism and with individualism than far left ideologies, which tend to go more towards communism and, I guess in certain cases, dictatorship as well, people speaking on behalf of other people. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it. This country is going towards the right, for sure. That's definite. The last election was a straight choice between pretty much what people were saying with far left, even though I don't really think it was far left. I think it was kind of left centre, and far right, which is kind of Conservative Party moving towards UKIP, moving towards Farage. So yeah, that's what's happening. Buckle your seatbelts for the next 4 years. What do you guys think?
The only same thing is that they both got opinions. So, one's going to counter each other. It depends. What's the only same thing that is the opinions, really. But they both have freedom to talk about what they want. That's the only thing that's the same. Apart from that, depends what they believe in. So you got to take everything into context and what they're pushing, what their agenda is. That's the thing that won't be the same. That's about it, really. I think that solves my opinion from it. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Kay, and I'm with Soko Films, which is a Christian channel here at Speaker's Corner. And my take on this question is, no, just linguistically, they're obviously not the same, although they both share the word far. They seem to be defined by each other to some extent, so it will be very left-wing people who define in the populist terms what makes up far right, and the same goes on back and forth. I think that in recent years, certainly in my experience, it seems to me at least now that anyone to the right of Chairman Mao is a Nazi, clearly. Anyone who has any fiscally conservative policies that they'd like to see within their country, anyone who'd like to see Christianity upheld as the state religion, anybody who'd like, just general law and order. So I think also with movements that come and go, to be fair, like the Me Too, the BLM, excuse me, they are on the surface absolutely correct. As a Christian, God tells us there is no Jew or Gentile anyway, and that all lives are precious to Him and should be to each other. And yet the agendas underneath seem to be left-wing, for sure. Any populist mainstream movements tend to be left-wing, in my opinion, although the actual left-wing of this country, because we seem to import them from America, is quite different. They have their own problems with anti-Semitism, as the right seem to have an Islamophobia, although I don't believe in that word, problems. So I think the main thing to realise is that politicians lie for a living. Lying lips are an abomination unto God, he says. He says that all lies will have their part in the lake of fire. I wouldn't trust them as far as I could throw them. I do vote, even though it encourages them, because you will find that good people go into that profession and do some good before they are just weighted down with the cynicism and expenses scandals. So my advice would be, don't necessarily believe somebody, because somebody could shout at me, far right, far left, and it doesn't mean that person knows the truth. It doesn't mean that person has any grasp of the collective understanding of those terms. In my humble opinion, Hitler was far left. He was a socialist. The fact that he was a national socialist does not denigrate his socialism. His fiscal policies were socialist. His humanitarian, that's ridiculous. His ethno-nationalism was quite solidified. His anti-Semitism was at the forefront. And so law and politics can't dictate to Christians, at least, what is right and wrong, because in Nazi Germany we know that it was legal to kill Jewish people. There was no moral standpoint condemning it. Similar to slavery, Christianity and Britain especially played a part in ending slavery, even though the Bible was used wrongly, in my opinion, to uphold the practices. But again, America has its history with slavery. Britain, in fact, didn't really have us within Britain exactly, not the empire. Within these isles, it wasn't such a major dividing factor. So again, it's not about race, it's not about intelligence, it's definitely not about sex. I don't say gender because it's not a social construct, it's what DNA you have. That's what the Lord recognises. So yeah, they're not the same thing, but I don't think they're as prevalent as the mainstream would have you think. I don't think that everybody who doesn't agree with somebody or other, some probably Madonna or I don't know, some like famous person who's living in a gated community, that makes them a Nazi. I think it's incredibly insulting to victims of real Nazis, the ones with the swastikas, of whom, you know, I had the pleasure to meet before they passed away because they're a very much older generation. So for those victims of actual Nazis, I think it's incredibly insulting to go around calling like a teenager a Nazi because they, whatever, I don't even know nowadays, because they uphold a view that isn't popular. And what you need to look at is who makes them popular. They're just fads, they come and go. Me Too, like the essence, like I say, was valid. There should be no sexual assaults, full stop, but there are. It doesn't mean to say that all men are potential rapists. It's nonsense. Just look at the facts, see where it sits. There's Jesus, brother. See where it sits in your gut. Like, do you think all men are potential rapists? Like on paper, academically, maybe, but only if they've got testicles, to be fair. And we know that it's racist to say that they're men at the moment. I don't know. Some LGBT people say that it's hateful to say that only women have cervical cancer. Let that one sink in. And I know I've rambled, but Jesus loves you and he is Lord. And thank you very much for listening to me.
Yes, a very interesting question, profound philosophical and practical question. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call it the same. I would draw an analogy between extreme heat and extreme cold. So for example, if you put your finger on extreme heat, it will burn. Equally, if you put your finger on extreme cold, that it also burns, creates a burn thing, you see. Creates the same effect on your finger, extreme heat, extreme cold. Now, even though the two are extremely different things, extreme heat and extreme cold are complete opposites, their effect on the human body is, in that case, is the same. So I would say they have similarities, but they're not the same. So, if you want to make political analogy between the extreme left and the extreme right, the best known example, people say, Nazi Germany and communist Soviet Russia. So let's look at Nazi Germany and communist Soviet Union and see the things they had in common and the things that they didn't have in common. Now, the things David Icke calls these people EPO sames. So like they're opposite, but they're the same in many ways. So Soviet Union, extremely anti-Semitic. Nazi Germany, anti-Semitic. Soviet Union, extremely authoritarian, with a system where people would get shot in the head. That was their favorite way of killing people. They had all these places all over the Soviet Union where there would be like camps where people would be worked to death, or if they were anti-regime, they would be murdered in their millions. I'm sure you know about Stalin's gulags and all the rest of it. And Nazi Germany, same thing. They had the concentration camps and so on. Extreme authoritarianism, you've got Hitler and you've got Stalin, both of them extremely authoritarian. Economic policy, both of them highly centralized, highly centralized. Military aggression, now people say the Second World War started when Germany invaded Poland. You could just as easily say the Second World War started when the Soviet Union invaded Finland in 1938, a year before. Why not go that way? Why say it started, and in fact, if you really look at it, I'm just going on a side issue. The Germans, when they heard about the Soviets going to Finland, they were very, very worried about it. They thought this regime is extremely aggressive. If they've gone into a helpless country and they've seized it and they've committed all these horrors for no reason whatsoever, we could be next. Therefore, we must strike them before they strike us, you see. How do we know that's not what they thought? So, again, going back to these similarities. Okay, so racial bias. Did you know that Stalin moved entire nations from where they were into new countries, created new countries? So, for example, he didn't like the Chechens being sort of Asiatic Muslim people. The Chechnya that we have today is not the Chechnya that was before. He completely moved the entire nation, put them somewhere. And he did that with other countries as well, inside the Soviet Union. So entire countries were moved because he didn't particularly like them racially. And in fact, he was such a psychopath that he actually had every city would have to have its own particular numbers of people to be executed and sent to the gulags. So you would say, oh, from Moscow we'll have so many people, from Leningrad, from Omsk, from Minsk. This number of people we've decided are going to be exterminated, and he would just sign his name. And he famously said that a single death is a tragedy, and 1 million deaths is a statistic. And that's pretty much what Hitler believed. Hitler believed that as well. Hitler believed, the millions and millions and the millions, it didn't bother him at all. Both of them were psychopaths. So the communist regime, you could argue, was a little bit like extreme cold or extreme heat, and the Nazi regime was extreme the other way around. So that makes them very, very similar in the way that you can cook food on extreme cold and you can cook food on extreme heat. So these are the similarities. How were they different? I would say, that's interesting. How were they different? Okay, let's pick another example in order to answer the question. We leave that bit for now. The extreme religious right in America and the religious right in Iran. Okay, so you've got the religious right in America who are in cahoots with the conservatives and the Republicans, voting for people like Ronald Reagan and all the right-wing nutcases in America who believe, some of them, they actually believe in Armageddon. They believe in Armageddon. And in fact, some of them are such nutcases, they want to bring about Armageddon in order to prove that the Bible was right all along. So if the Bible and the Torah talk about Armageddon and the Armageddon happens, that means, oh, see, our book was authentic, you see. Some of them actually want to bring it about. Now you've got the similar nutcases in Iran who also want to bring about Armageddon, but from the Islamic point of view. So you've got the opposames. You've got the right-wing Christians and you've got the right-wing Muslims, both of them hating each other's religion, but both of them in their mentality and their ideology being so similar, and both of them, if you look at the similarity, both of them hate homosexuals. Both of them hate people who are not married, and they have this sort of moral code that if you go beyond this moral code, also horrible things should happen to you, and they believe in marriage and they believe in family values. Look at all the similarities, but they also have hatred for each other. They seem to be on opposite ends, but they also are very, very similar. So I would say they're not necessarily the same. They have many, many similarities, but they also have many, many differences. Another example, North Pole and the South Pole. North Pole and the South Pole. They seem to be on opposite sides of the planet. They're both extremely cold. They look almost exactly the same, but they're also extremely different, extremely different. The North Pole is totally different to the South Pole in many, many ways. The animals that live in the North Pole are not the same as the animals that live in the South Pole. The electromagnetic field in the North Pole is not the same as the electromagnetic field in the South Pole, but they have a lot of similarities, but they have a lot of... If you look at, for example, magnets, the positive side and the negative side. Again, very, very interesting. So I would say it's a very complex situation, very complex thing. If you look at the law of vibration, what does the law of vibration say? The law of vibration says that things, people that are on the same frequency of vibration will come together. Now, it may be that they're at the opposite end of the scale, but they're still on the same frequency of vibration. So you get the extreme right and the extreme left. You see, for example, the fascists and the anti-Nazi league. They come together and they have a fight, you see. But people who are not in the polar thing, as polar, they would not be involved in a fight because the vibration would not pull them towards a fight. They will not have the aggression. So in order to have a fight, you need to have aggression inside you. You need to have enough hatred, enough aggression, and then you need to have somebody else with similar amount of aggression and similar amount of hatred in order to have a fight. So that's how vibration works. So the lower vibration is like attracts like, and things that are different pull each other apart. So in the case of things that are opposite, even though they appear to be opposite, they're on the same vibration but on different sides. They're on the same frequency but on opposite sides. So like vibration attracts like vibration, so there you have conflict. So be it Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, be it Muslims and Christians, crusades, whatever you want to call it, that's how the nature of reality seems to work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
They are not the same, but sometimes they can be similar in some aspects. But they are not the same exactly. There are people who hate them the same, but are they the same in their ideologies? No, they are not the same. Each one can have different agenda and different political views and so on. Thank you.
Bring the point over here. Because my name is Hafiz Rahman, I'm from London, so I live here in London, so from the long time. So actually about the far right and far the left, there's something. Whenever you see the opportunity, either something about your career in politics or anything else like this, because I'm interested in politics as well. And if you're doing something like a business, so whatever the opportunities you need it for, if you need to go too far, anything you need to see on your right side. So if you want to go too far, or if there's something on your destination, so you should reach your destination. If you need to go too far away, you can go far away. Sometimes you can just see on your left side, but it's not something on your right side. So might be something on the back, something on the something move forward. So it depends what you want to do in your life and what you want to achieve, whatever your targets, whatever your goals. If you want to do something on the right side, you can achieve the right side. If you want to see something on the left side, so you can go. But it's something when you go far, you get something better. This is my personal experience as well, because I live here in the Ealing and I come here for the central London. Is far from my house, but still I come here for the shopping. I have something nearest the shopping center as well, but I didn't go there. I come here especially central London, but this is far. But this is on my left hand side. I see the opportunity. Central London is better for me. That's why I come here. So if I need to go somewhere on the right hand side, anything like this about your career, whatever opportunity, so you need to take your destination. So depends on something situation, depends on the scenario, whatever. So both, in my opinion, both are the same. Is no any something big difference, but it depends on whatever you want to do in your life and whatever something your target. So you need to focus on your goals. Thank you so much.
So I think they're the same in the sense it can be difficult to have a dialogue between the two different groups. I think in the future, hopefully, we can all sit down and have a bit of a debate and not get too entrenched and just listen to the other side's opinion and have a good chat. Going forward, I hope also that we can not get too attached to some of our ideas and be open to being flexible, so we can make a better world for everyone. Cheers.